and therefore I've got that natural empathy to know that how that person might be feeling when they first contact me. They might be thinking they're probably in a specific place in their life, and they're probably having specific thought processes and worries and concerns. And to be able to say, it's okay, I've been there, I know where you are, I know I've been there myself, and you can get through to the other side. Whereas coaches are very specific, well, they should be, if they're decent coaches, should be quite specific in terms of who they want to help. And if they are business strategy coaches, then that should just be, if you think actually I need help with that specific aspect of my business, then they might be the people to go to. However, it's just about being careful that they're not calling themselves coaches when actually they're not, their mentors, and you get a different experience with a coach. And I have a mentor, and she's very direct. She'll sort of say to me, all right, I've looked at this that you've done, I think you need to change this and this and this. Whereas a coach is very different. They might say, for example, I've looked at that. Tell me a bit more about what you mean here. And then you're getting the person to just unpick it a bit. And then, you're asking, okay, so what do you think the benefits are of saying that particular thing in there? Or what do you think, how do you think that's going to help your business to grow? So they're not saying to you, in order for your business to grow, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. They're getting you to do that thought process yourself. And I think it's a more powerful approach, because you're giving people ownership, and they come away from a session and they've come up with all the ideas. They've come up with all the actions. They know exactly what they're going to do. You're just kind of there as an accountability person to be like, great, so when we next chat, let's see how you've got on with that. And there's no sort of idea that the coach is going to give you all the answers. That's much more a mentor's role. So I think when you seek a coach, I think you just need to be clear about what you want from the person, whether you are actually seeking a mentor or a consultant, or whether you are wanting a coach who's going to get you to come up with all the ideas and the suggestions yourself.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, because I think maybe a lot of people are intermixing the two. And it could be, as you say, there are maybe some people out there who are calling themselves a coach, but actually what they're doing is more on the mentoring side of it or the strategy side of it. But I think knowing that those are two sort of separate services, and while there may be a little bit of overlap in some places, you could potentially find yourself making use of both sides of that in different ways, depending on what you're needing help with.
Definitely. And I know that you were saying that I saw on your Instagram, you're talking about working with somebody who was helping with marketing. And that's quite a specialist area where they can give you direct advice that will impact your marketing strategy, or you might be going to them for just overall business strategy, or you might be talking to them about that social media strategy, or anything that's particularly niche. Where they're going to say to you, these are the things that you need to do. For example, I've done a social media course where they were sort of saying very directly, you need to use this many hashtags, or you need, so it's all that sort of thing where it's very, it's almost like teaching, I suppose, that you're sort of there to learn specifics from them. And I think a coach is more there to develop your ability to problem solve, to think on your feet, to try out ideas, and and be there, that if maybe you try something you thought you might work, and if it didn't work, they're there to sort of say to you, okay, let's talk a bit about why that didn't work, and what could you do. So it's more of a conversation. It's more of a getting you to think about, because I firmly believe everybody has the answers they need inside. It's just about having someone there to ask the right questions, to draw those answers out, and to say to you, okay, that sounds great. So what do you think you're going to do this week? What do you think is going to be your priority this week? And getting them again to think and to talk and to discuss. I think that's so powerful, to have that space to be able to do that.
Well, and especially as small business owners, so I realize everybody has a slightly different setup, and some people might have some staff or have a business partner. But for people like myself who are sole traders, and most of the small business owners I know are in that kind of position, they are the sole person responsible for sort of developing their business. Having somebody to coach you through that, to keep you on track, and to kind of figure out where a lot of this stuff is coming from is even more valuable, because you don't have a marketing team, or you don't have a huge staff base to discuss this stuff back and forth with. So even just what you said there about talking about prioritizing certain things in the week and saying these things out loud, because you notice it in most aspects of your life, or I notice it with myself a lot when I'm having conversations with people. Things just come out that you maybe didn't expect. When you start talking, you get out on a roll, and someone who is trained and, you know, their specialty and a skill set for them is helping people to verbalize these things. I can see that being such a huge asset.
Yeah, and I think what I like about it, and what I find from my own experience of coaching, is that it makes you have really focused goals to work on in your business. And so if, for example, with people I work with who are looking to change their careers, it's such a minefield ahead of you when you think, okay, I think I want to stop what I'm doing. I think I want to change my career. And then you think, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know the first thing to do. And so when you work with a coach, they then sort of say to you, okay, this is what I find really powerful about it, is that you might say, this is where you are now. Okay, imagine it's 5 years from now. Tell me a bit, what is it like for you now? What are you doing now? And you go ahead and you think about, okay, I've got so for example, it might be, I've got my own business. I work X amount of hours per week in my business. It means I can pick up my children from school. It means that I can still enjoy holidays with my family, or, anything that is important to them. And we talk about what kinds of things are people saying to you? What can you see around you? I really, you get really down into the specifics. Where are you? Are you still at your house? Where have you moved? What car are you driving? Just getting people to really think outside the box. And then we bring it back and you start thinking, okay, so if you were going to be there in 5 years, let's bring it back. What do you think you'd have to do in the next year? What do you think you'd have to be doing in the next, so go to a year from now, where would you be? Okay, this might be happening. Okay, brilliant. So where do you think you might be in 6 months? What might be happening in 6? And we bring it all the way back to, okay, so let's think about right now. What's the first thing you could do just to get you, out of this feeling of confusion? And normally it's things like, writing down all the ideas I've got in my head, because often we hold them all up in our head, and people say, I'm going to make a list of all the possibilities that I could go into if I wanted to change career. These are all my areas of interest. And then, so we really break it down to, putting them into the future, which is always exciting when you've got plans, and then bringing them all the way back to right now. What's the first thing you need to be able to do, and to discuss that, and to have goals that are very specific is really helpful. I think I have business goals. I'm sure you have, business goals, and to have somebody there who's always sort of saying to you, okay, so how's that goal going? What have you done this week towards that? And just being able to revisit them and to think about what actions you need to take is really powerful.
I think the goal setting thing is interesting, because you're right, most business owners have goals, but they might just be floating around in their head. And I know, admittedly, I'm not very good at that, about laying things out on paper and going, okay, what actionable steps am I going to take? I do that kind of maybe once a year, or if I'm being quite organized, I might do it every 6 months and just check in with myself and see where things are going. But I tend to leave it a little bit too long, and I think I can easily veer off too far on the path. And having that, again, it's accountability as well as somebody to get you to verbalize these things or write them down, that a lot of people struggle with. Because you're right, things float around in your head and you get excited about an idea and just roll with it, but how often do we kind of stop and check ourselves? And having a coach to do that and to kind of help you delve a little bit deeper and unpick all of these things, as you're saying, is I imagine that's quite a valuable process, and also one that speeds up your growth in business because you have somebody checking in with you so often, rather than waiting to that 6 month or 1 year mark and finding that you've actually lost some time.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of regular sessions, you know, some people like them weekly, some people fortnightly, some people monthly, and I think it's whatever works for that person. But I think anything more than monthly, you tend to sort of start veering off in different directions. And I think it's okay to do that. It's okay to realize that, you know, ideas that you had, actually they might not come into fruition, or they might not have been the right thing to do. But it's actually just thinking, yeah, do you know what, I had a go at that and that didn't work. And then it's an opportunity with your coach to really think about why it didn't maybe work the way you wanted it to, or to almost have somebody to just offload to and be like, oh, I really thought this was going to work and it didn't. And then for someone to kind of pick you up again and sort of say, okay, that didn't work. So let's have a think about what else could work. And I think the more you start to do it within a coaching session, the more you're then able to do it just generally in life by yourself. The things might happen in other areas of your life where you start to adopt that attitude of, you know, okay, oh, so that didn't work out. You know, it might even be something as silly as, you know, you try a new recipe. If, you know, if like anyone's children are like mine, you know, you put something new in front of them and they're all a bit like, oh, you know, what is this you're forcing us to eat tonight? And actually sometimes, you know, you try something and it just doesn't work out. And whereas before you'd be like, oh, well, I should never bother trying new recipes. You know, what's the point? No one's going to eat what we just may as well stick to what we always have. And then actually the more you start to problem solve in other areas of your life, the more it can then, you know, you start to think, oh, okay, that recipe didn't work, but actually maybe I just need to take that out of it, or maybe I just need to add this instead. So it's just interesting how if you can start to be more open-minded and develop that kind of growth mindset in business, it starts to float and kind of seep out into other areas of your life. And you realize that, you know, nothing's a complete disaster. There's always something that can be rescued and learned from. So
it's interesting how all of these things tie together as well, because I find that sometimes, say that I've bought a book that's sort of more related to my business, but I do find that when I start to employ these things in my business, that they do tend to kind of trickle down. There was, I can't think of the author's name now, but it's quite a famous book. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. It's the life-changing magic of not giving I won't spell out that word.
Yeah, it's Mark Manson. Yeah, no, it's Mark Manson. Yeah, he's the author.
Yeah, so there's, there's a female author as well. Maybe I've got the wrong.
I think it's
Sarah.
Oh, it's Sarah Knight. Sarah Knight? Yeah. So there's a Mark Manson book with a similar title. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a
sleep. That word. Yeah. But, you know, you read a book like that, and I remember reading that book and thinking like, okay, I could certainly create some sort of new guidelines for myself in terms of my business, but also it translates so much into your personal life, and you can see how that will happen when you start to think differently about goals, or differently about customer service, or the way that you approach inquiries, or any of these things. It seems like a small thing that's only related to that one area, but actually the trickle down effect into every other aspect of your life is huge.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think definitely with things like career change or making a change in life, it requires a lot of courage. And, you know, Brene Brown always talks about courage over comfort, you know, that whole idea of, you know, having to step out of that comfort zone, show courage. And, you know, when you're a business owner, or when you're considering a big change in life, it takes courage. And I think we underestimate how much courage it actually takes to make these decisions. But I think the more you show up, the more that you do, you know, have that confidence to take small steps every day in any area of your life. You're right, it starts to trickle, and the confidence that gives you just starts to go out into other areas, and all of a sudden you start saying yes to things that maybe you used to say no to, or opportunities that originally maybe you thought, oh no, I could never do that. There's that magical never word. You all of a sudden, that just that little bit of confidence that you've built up in one aspect of life can really, really help you in other areas. And you start to realize that just by you know, saying yes to more things, or, you know, things like this for me, you know, opportunities to come on to podcasts to talk, you know, that's something that is just takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it